All right, welcome to our regular Thursday meetings. It seems with the New York Giants Preservation Society. Tonight we have a special night. Judith Taylor from the Midwest, a college professor and author, is going to be talking about a book she wrote a while back, but still the subject matter still very dear to New York Giant fans. That being Sal the Barber Maglie. Just some housekeeping details of what's going on. Next week we have Peter Laskowicz. He'll be talking about touring around where the polo grounds are, and the guy knows everything about the polo grounds. I think Rich Rogers will have a field day with him, so that'll be good. The following week is 4th of July week, and we're going to take a pass that week. And then we're going to come back with Phil Mushnick of the New York Post, who is just an incredible writer on baseball and mostly media. He's kind of like a lot of us in that we're the old men on the porch complaining about things changing. But he is a magnificent writer, and he really just tells it like it is. And I think he will be really an incredible guest. And he has, some knowledge of New York Giant history. So that is what we're going to look forward to. I have somebody lined up for August. We got September, and a lot of people are now going to start committing to coming on board as far as finishing their projects and start to talk about books they're involved in and other things like that. But without further ado, it is my pleasure. I met Judith, through the email, and then last week we did a little practice run on this, and she passed the test, and she was very happy. And she said I acted like a school teacher, and I guess I did, but I was very thrilled that I was able to do this. So, Judith, welcome aboard to the Giants Preservation Society, and let's give her a round of applause. Judith, the floor is yours. Handle this the way you want. If you want to talk about your book, how you did it, or you want questions and answers in between at the end, whatever you want, the floor is yours. And welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. Okay, this is the book, by the way. I can hold it up here so you can see it. I'm sure you recognize that face.
The scowl.
Right? Most people ask me, how did I happen to be writing this book? Because I'm an art historian. I have a PhD from the University of Chicago in Renaissance art history. That's not exactly the usual route to writing about baseball. But I grew up in New York on Long Island when there were 3 baseball teams to root for. And I just grew up with baseball. I say I'm bilingual. I speak 2 languages, English and baseball. I don't remember learning either. I always understood baseball. I don't remember a time when I didn't, so I've always just loved baseball. I learned it from my grandfather and my father, and, it was just part of the language growing up. And I followed the Giants and the Dodgers avidly until they both left town. And then I gave up on baseball for an entire generation, like 40 years. And then when I retired, I started watching the Chicago Cubs because I live now out near Chicago. So that seemed like the team to root for. And then I started remembering how much I loved baseball back in the 50s. And I always wanted to write a biography of somebody. So the 2 kind of dovetailed. I thought, well, how about a baseball player that I really liked? And somehow Maglie just floated into my mind. And I started out, I was going to write an article. It's longer than my PhD dissertation. But so, once I get started on research, there's no stopping me. And I went to Italy. I researched his family. I wound up knowing more about his family than the current Maglies knew. So that's how I got into it. And then once I got started, it just kind of snowballed into a book. And Maglie always fascinated me as a kid. I wasn't sure why. He was kind of sinister, and at the same time, he was a very handsome man. I mean, I'm a woman. You guys don't understand this shit, but you know, women loved Maglie. He was a tall, dark, and dangerous looking, you know, and I guess that was part of it. I don't remember. I was a kid, but you know, something about him just intrigued me. And so I just decided, well, he'll be the one I'll write about. So that's how I got started on the book. And as I say, it just kind of mushroomed from an article into this full-length biography, got into his childhood and his marriage and, you know, some really intimate details of his private life that I learned from his family and so on. And people in Italy helped me track down stuff about his family that the family even didn't know. And his second wife, his first wife had died by then. And I interviewed one of his surviving adopted son and all kinds of baseball officials. I talked to Buzzy Bavasi, man, what a character he was. And a number of old players, and Vellante, another, you know, Dodger official who knew him. I talked to Carl Furillo's son, and it was various people. Erskine I corresponded with. He didn't accept phone calls, but he wrote me a letter. And somehow all these different people were able to contribute, along with, of course, microfilms of all of the old New York newspapers that don't exist anymore. And you know, I've just pulled together this picture of the man, not just his baseball career, but what kind of a person was he? You know, what was he like off the field? And he was totally different off the field than he was on the field. That I found out very quickly. So, you know, he had a really nasty reputation as a pitcher. And everybody I talked to, without exception, said what a nice man he was, what a good-natured, polite, soft-spoken, and he wasn't a racist. That was fairly rare in those days. So, you know, it was nice to kind of pull together this whole picture of a man who played baseball rather than a book about baseball. That was my focus on him as a man, and a man who played baseball and played it very well in his later years, although he was a crappy player in his younger days. But he got better. He learned from experience. I could just go on and on and on, but do you guys have any questions?
Judith, how long did this take you to compile?
Oh, altogether, maybe about 3 years, something like that. Yeah, about 3 years, about the same as my PhD dissertation. It was very similar. You know, research is research, whatever you're doing.
This gives me the opportunity to say, Dr. Testa. Would,
You don't have to call me that.
what?
She
Well,
said you don't have to call her that.
Oh, yeah, but I want to.
Go ahead.
Seriously, you say you grew up on Long Island. Did you happen to run into or know Doris Kearns Goodwin, another historian? She lived out on
the same. We came from the same town.
Wow.
And I knew her slightly. She was 1 year ahead of me in school. We went to the same high school. I didn't know her. I just knew of her. She was very smart, and everybody thought she had a bright future, which she did. But I didn't know her personally.
Judith, you have a lot of Long Islanders in here. Where on Long Island did you grow up?
At Rockville Center.
I'm from Huntington. I think Jeff's from Wantagh.
And I'm from Lawrence.
Lawrence. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Roslyn Heights.
I recognize the accents. I know who's the New Yorkers here.
All right, we got Jeff Cohen's going to ask a question, and then Steve, and then Patrick.
Thanks, Gary. Judith, I was born after the Sal Maglie pitch, so I never got to see him pitch, but I'm looking at his baseball reference page, and I noticed that he pitched for all three New York teams. Obviously, most noted for the Giants. But was that kind of unusual for someone like Maglie to pitch for all three teams in New York?
It's very unusual. He was also the last player ever to play for all three teams, because obviously the two of them left. But yeah, it was very, very unusual. I couldn't tell you if there was any others. There probably
Tony
were.
Lazzari.
The last one.
Tony Lazzari was one.
Who?
Okay.
Stengel.
Tony
Stengel.
Lazzari.
Oh, okay. Whatever you say.
There were others.
I think she was referring to that he was the last one because the teams moved.
Yeah.
And I noticed he's from upstate New York, from Niagara Falls. So he was born there, died there, and he's actually buried up there.
That's right. I saw his grave.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he never, became a swell-headed guy. He just kept this, same hometown roots, never lived anywhere else, always owned a home there. Got a nicer home as he got more money, but he never lived in any kind of a mansion or anything. But, those guys, the most money they made was like, I think his highest salary was $37,000 a year, which was much more than a high school teacher made about $3,000 a year then.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you some idea. He made about 10 times more than a high school teacher. Today, a pitcher like that would make 1,000 times more than a high school teacher. So, it sounds like peanuts, but it was substantial income back then.
Thank you.
Judith, I got a quick question before I turn it over to Steve. I love the cover of the book. Did you know right away that was the picture?
Oh, absolutely. I saw that picture and said, that's it. I can't tell you how many pictures of Maglie I own. I've got a hallway full of them because I didn't want to throw them away. That was back when, when you had to buy paper pictures. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was in the early 2000s, but they didn't have the online images then. I had to buy paper pictures, and I've got that one hanging on the wall.
It's a great photo.
Isn't
Steve,
it? It captures him all right, the eyes especially.
Steve,
Just a
it's
couple of
yours.
issues that maybe you could touch. I don't know how many people on the Zoom realize that Maglie and Danny Gardella were the ones that ended up going to Mexico. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that situation. And then I remember the end of the book that he died. It was awful the last, I guess, several months of his life. So maybe you can just touch on those two topics.
Okay, the Mexican League.
Yeah.
Well, wow. That was a sort of an alternative baseball universe. The Pascual brothers thought they could start another major league, and they had a lot of money and they threw it around. And I'm sure you're all aware most baseball players were not well paid, certainly not a guy like Danny Gardella. But Maglie was kind of marginal at that point. What was it, 1946, I think, 45, 46. I forgot the years, but he was dissatisfied with the way the Giants were treating him. And the Mexican guys came along just at the right time, and offered him big money. And so he and his wife packed up and went to Mexico, and things were pretty primitive there. Sal didn't mind too much. He was pretty tough, but his wife just freaked out. She did not adjust to life in Mexico very well at all. But he did learn a lot there. He had, you all heard of Dolph Luque, right? The old Cuban pitcher.
Yep, pitcher.
Who took Maglie under his wing and taught him how to throw inside, high inside. That's where he learned that from Dolph Luque, who was very tough on him, apparently. But in those 2 years in Mexico, where he was, suffering from, what do you call it? Montezuma's revenge and throwing up from bad food and, all kinds of horrible things happening. His family told me he never wanted to tell people how sick he was in Mexico, but they said he was really sick. But he managed to pitch anyway, and he learned a lot there. So when he came back, he came back a different player. He came back really tough. He played in 110-degree heat, and played for a guy who brought a gun with him to the park. That was Luke Hay, who you would shoot at people's feet apparently if you didn't like what they were doing. So it was a very formative experience for him in Mexico. He probably would not have become the pitcher he became if he hadn't gone to Mexico and hadn't had Luque as his manager and pushing him the way Luque did to turn him into the kind of pitcher that we all know. And he was a nice guy, and he wasn't, didn't go out on the field angry or anything, but Luque showed him how to scare people. And he used
At the end of his life, the last few months of his life.
Well, he suffered a brain aneurysm, which could kill most people. He walked around with it for a week and didn't even, I got a bad headache. Leave me alone, Finally, he went to the doctor and doctor did a CAT scan or something. For crying out loud, you had an aneurysm. You're going in the hospital right now. And so he had surgery on this, and he survived, and he had a little depression in his side of his head there. And he had about another 2 years of he was retired then, but of, pretty good life. And then he suddenly started to really go downhill, and probably as a result of this surgery, it wasn't so much Alzheimer's as a dementia that was probably caused by the monkeying around in his brain there. And he went through all of the bad things that happen when people become demented. He didn't recognize people. He said and did inappropriate things, and his wife was afraid of him because he'd have sudden eruptions of rage, and he didn't know what to do. So he was put in a nursing home, and I talked to Sibby Sisti, remember him? Another one of those nice old utility players. He went to see Sal, and he almost started to cry when he was talking to me. He said it was so sad to see this man just, staring into space and not knowing anybody, strapped to his chair because he was violent sometimes, just all these awful things that he didn't deserve, but happened to him anyway. And eventually he developed pneumonia, and they didn't treat it, and it was time for him to go. So that's what he died of.
Thank you.
75, seems kind of young now.
Patrick, you're up.
Gary, thanks for having me. Judith, thanks for taking my question. I'm a Dodger fan from Flushing, and I saw my first game at the age of 7 in 1947. I was a rabid Dodger fan until they left. I'm coming to you today from Walla Walla, Washington, where I've been living for 40 years.
Okay.
I have 2 related questions. What was it like for Maglie to come to the Dodgers in 1956? He had a great year. He was either 11-5 or 13-5. He won a World Series game.
Mhm.
And the second question is, the first one is, how did he get along with it? And the second one is, did Ferrello's son confirm the story that came down in Dodger lore about the first time he walked into the clubhouse?
Well, what was the first thing you wanted to know? I'll take one question.
Just how did the Dodgers take,
How did the Dodgers
after
react?
all those years of shaving?
At first, they were not happy. Apparently, Buzzy Bavasi asked around among the Dodgers, how do you feel about us hiring Sal Maglie? And Ferrillo's, in his usual way, said, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" Just furious. And they thought, "Oh my God, Ferrillo's gonna leap at him and try to strangle him or something." And the other players said, "Well, if we can use him, all right." But Ferrillo was furious. He was very unhappy. So when Maglie walked into the clubhouse and Ferrillo, they looked up at him, apparently, and there was just this moment, and then somehow or other, they shook hands and became teammates, and they did not fight with one another. They got along. They're both fellow Italians, and they got along. There were, as far as I ever could find out from anybody, there were no battles between them. They were on the same team. So
Patrick, Patrick and Judith, when I got Carl Erskine to speak to us when I was making the initial calls, he brought up Sal Maglie, and he was asked about him, and he said, as long as Sal Maglie is healthy, they should acquire him, and they did, and he said he was fabulous on the Dodgers.
He was. And what was the other question? He had two questions, and I don't know, my short-term memory just went. What?
I think you answered both of them. The other one was about whether that story was true about when he walked into the locker room and there was a guy there, maybe the bullpen catcher, Joe Pignataro.
But they were all Italian, so most of the team was somewhere else, and there were 3 Italian guys and the clubhouse guy, Charlie the Brow di Giovanna, and apparently Charlie yelled, "Don't do it, Carl. We're all Dagos here."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess if Italians use that term, it's okay. But and then Maglie and Furlow just kind of smiled and shook hands, and that was the end of that. There was never any more problem between the two of them.
He was a great Dodger in 1956, and they certainly wouldn't have gone to the World Series without him. So
I have to tell you this story though. When I was a kid and this happened, next door neighbors, there was a Jewish family named Appel, and Joe Appel and my father were good friends. And so my dad was Italian, but he was always taken from being Jewish. So I guess that one of the reasons they got along so well. Anyway, Joe Appel came over to my father, and I still remember this, and he had this look on his face. "Did you hear about Maglie joining the Dodgers?" And he looked at my dad, and I can remember Joe shaking his head, and he was saying, "It's like hearing that Hitler converted to Judaism." I thought, oh my God, that's kind of an extreme analogy. But if this guy said it, I heard him say it. It's like hearing that Hitler converted to Judaism. I think I put that in the book too. That was too good to leave out.
1 second, Renee. Steve, Patrick is good friends with Rob Garrett.
yeah, I am. Yeah, that's how I got. Yeah.
Renee, you're up.
Do you have any stories of relationships, any funny stories or any stories particular about Maglie and Mays?
They got along well. Not so much stories about Maglie and Mays, but thanks to the cross references in the Hall of Fame library, I got to know Art Superman Pennington, who was an old Negro Leagues player who knew Maglie in Mexico. And I got quite friendly with Art, and I used to talk to him a lot. And he did say, he said, Sal Maglie was the only totally unprejudiced white man I ever met in my life.
Wow.
He said he absolutely was not racially prejudiced in any way, ever, never heard him say anything. And Art, you know, being a Negro Leagues player, he ran into plenty of prejudice in his life. And that really stayed in my mind, that a Black player would say that he was the only really unprejudiced white man that he ever met. And he got along fine with Willie Mays.
So you don't have to defend her. I understand. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Renee, you done with that? Steve, you're up.
Yeah, I have one more.
Yeah,
Go
wasn't
ahead,
there a
Renee. Go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Renee.
All right. So he didn't drink. He didn't. But I mean, he had to travel with the team. Any stories about his relationships with the players? The fun? Anything comical?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
When they traveled together as a team, did they go out together? And was there any stories of, carousing or card playing or anything?
Well, Maglie was a heavy smoker. He liked to drink.
Thank you.
But he was never a nasty drunk. He didn't become like another person when he had a few drinks. He didn't become, aggressive or anything. But yeah, he liked to drink, and he smoked heavily, could swear in 3 languages, English, Italian, and Spanish, and used it all, and had a few gestures to go with it. Apparently he used them, the groin grab and all these kind of things. And he did have a gambling habit in his later years, not when he was a player, but later on, that he broke himself of that before he, went into financial ruin. And when he was in his early playing days, apparently he absolutely adored his first wife, and he was not a guy who fooled around a lot. But I heard a few things about when he was with the Yankees that he got in with that pretty fast crowd there in his last year or so when he was, with Whitey Ford and Mantle and that crew who did a lot of drinking and fooling around with the ladies. And apparently he got into that at that point, but he didn't have that reputation throughout his career. Just
Judith, were you upset when you found that out, since you admired him so much for his good looks?
Well, that's baseball players. I used to kid my former boyfriend if he said something I didn't like. I said, listen, Bill, when I come back in another life, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball groupie. I can understand why these guys had women crawling all over them,
All right, we're gonna have Steve, Harvey, and then Mars.
Just for Renee, I don't know if he saw the end of an era. I might be wrong, and Gary, you can correct me. Isn't one of the scenes in there at Resna's thing where Mays is kind of helping Maglie with his tie?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's in there, right?
Yes.
And Gary, does he travel with Garrett? Was he here in Arizona with him? I don't think so.
You could ask Patrick, he's here.
Yeah. Patrick, did you travel with Rob?
No.
Okay.
I just, no, his son went to the school that I teach in, and that's where we became friends. And then
Gotcha.
he started his research on the home team book.
You live in a good city. They liked it so much, they named it twice.
They did. It's a good place.
All right, we got Harvey, Mars, and then Andy Baumgartner.
Judith, in all the photographs that you obviously reviewed, did you ever find one where Sal didn't have that menacing looking beard?
Well, yeah, he only grew that beard on his game days. He had a very heavy beard, one of those men who had 5 o'clock shadow by 10 in the morning, but he only let his beard grow the day before, he was going to pitch. The rest of the time he was clean shaven. He always had that kind of shadow of a dark beard, but he didn't go around like these guys do today. Who the hell wants to kiss these people? I mean, it's like kissing a cheese grater, But anyway, Maglie was a very dapper dresser and always, very neatly turned out and clean shaven when he wasn't going to pitch. He let his beard grow for like 24 hours, and that's what it looked like.
He knew what he looked like, in other words. He wanted to look.
Absolutely, he did. He was asked about that, and he said, yeah, he knew that it contributed to his sinister image.
Yeah. The barber.
The barber. Well,
Mars, you're up, Mars.
Hair. That's shaving chins.
Mars, all yours.
Hi.
Mars, turn on your mic. Mars, your mic.
Mars, unmute. Mars, you gotta unmute.
Andy.
Yeah,
Andy
here I am.
Baumgartner, go ahead.
All right, first of all, I'm still having technical problems, so I missed the beginning, Judith, but I'll watch it again tomorrow.
Okay.
So I have a little trivia on the Maglie no-hitter and then a question. The Maglie no-hitter was 13 days before Larson's perfect game. Maglie, of course, lost to Larson in the perfect game.
Yes.
When Maglie pitched the no-hitter, the first out, I think, of the ninth, Roy Campanella made a good play. Dale Mitchell kept him from falling in the dugout. And more incredible, the next batter was Harvey Haddix. You can't make this stuff up. And obviously he pitched a perfect game. My question is, concerning the Mexican League, did you come across anything involving Bill Kunstler? Because I know he was involved with the Mexican League.
That name is not familiar to me, no.
The attorney?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
That's good, Mars, you're up.
Okay, so I have a comment. First of all, I'd like to welcome Judith. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Uh,
My pleasure.
and so I have a comment and I had a question. My pop got me involved, teaching me the game early on. We lived in Upper Manhattan, so we went to the Polo Grounds. Generally on a Sunday, his only day off from work. He used to point out the hitters with Brooklyn that Maglie owned. So he pointed out, watch the way the barber shaves Gil Hodges right under the chin. A little chin music, like Jackie Gleason used to say, or, you know, he said, watch how he shaves Gil Hodges. Hodges can't touch him. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, did Maglie say which was his favorite New York team to pitch for?
He was tactful, you know, when he pitched for the Giants, of course, he was a Giants guy. And, you know, baseball is a profession. It isn't a religion. You know, when he went to the Dodgers, he became you know, he was for the Dodgers. He didn't, it's a professional, you know, you work for the people who pay you.
Right, but sometimes you have a favorite clubhouse where there's a lot of camaraderie more than others.
Well, I think he really got along with the Dodgers. He even said that he actually was more comfortable. He got along better with the Dodgers. And once the Dodger fans warmed up to him, they were crazy about him. That it took a while. He said at first, when he first went out on the field, he felt a little exposed, but that he said he really liked the Dodgers, and he got along well with Carl Furillo. They became kind of good friends, paisani, you know, they both Italians, and they wound up getting along. I talked to Furillo's son, who confirmed that. He said his father and Maglie stayed friendly after they both retired, and you know, they really formed a real friendship.
Thanks, Judith.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Scheffner, you have a question, Bill?
Hi, Judith. Nice to meet another Long Islander. I just happened to reread the 50th anniversary of the new version of Ball 4, or the extended version of it. And obviously, he was the pitching coach for the Seattle Pilots, and he didn't come across. I guess he didn't. You know, a lot of people didn't come across too well in the book. And I'm just wondering if there are any mentions of, you know, him as the pitching coach for the Pilots and everything. If he talked anything about Ball 4 or anything like that.
Oh, that was a real sore point with Maglie.
I would think so,
You
yeah.
know, Bowden was really cruel to him. Not only did he say he was useless as a pitching coach, he said he was ludicrous looking anachronism. You know, he was just worthless. He had terrible things about him in that book.
Yeah.
And Maglie said he didn't read the book, but, you know, people told him about it, and he didn't like that at all. You know, he thought it was very personal and not the kind of thing that he should have done, you know, attacking the guy's appearance and ridiculing it. Okay, some people like Jim Lomborg said he was a terrific pitching coach and he learned a lot from him. But clearly he was not a knuckleball guy, and that was about the only pitch Boughton had left at that point. And Maglie just considered that a joke pitch. You know, I don't teach people to do, you know, you learn a curve and a fastball and so on. And he and Boughton just didn't get along at all. And Boughton was I thought, very cruel to him in that book.
Yeah, he was.
Of course, I'm kind of pro Maglie, so.
But he was apparently he was a New York Giant fan, Jim Boughton, and apparently he was a big fan of Maglie's when he came.
So he was so disappointed.
He was
really
disappointed, yeah.
He thought Maglie was going to turn him into, you know, a 20-game winner or something, and just didn't happen. They didn't get along at all.
Okay, thank you.
We got Bill Klink.
Actually, Bill Schiffner asked my question about being a pitching coach, but I would ask you, you know, he did coach him at the stadium in Seattle, which was really pretty much of a bandbox. That was a small stadium. Did he say that was particularly difficult for the pitchers? Did he have any comments about that? That's the only thing I could add.
Not
Bill
that I recall.
took most of it away there.
Just that, you know, the team itself was kind of made up of has-beens and wannabes and never was's.
Yeah.
You know, I guess a few of the players, I don't remember their names even now, but, you know, there were no future Hall of Famers on that team, as I recall. And, you know, Maglie had to deal with what he could, do what he could for the people that he had there. And he was, at that point, I think his wife was dying, and she had
Yeah.
cancer, and his family was in kind of in tatters, and then he had this team full of people that were very good players, and he was 3,000 miles away from home. His home's in Niagara Falls. He was on the West Coast, and it was not a good year for him, not at all.
Thank you. Ed, you're up, Ed. And then
Yeah,
Patrick.
this is a very, very nice talk about Sal Maglie, and I'm an old Polo Grounders. But you may or may not have any information on this, but when like Leo DeRocher and all the Hollywood type peoples with the Giants, and we were friends with Mickey McDermott, probably a player you're not aware of, but with the Yankees, he used to be with that gang. Did Frank Sinatra appear in your book at all?
No, he did not. DeRocher was, kind of a background player in the book, but I didn't go into that whole gang. No, I don't know if Maglie ever met Frank Sinatra. He might have, after all, a fellow Italian, but I don't recall coming across any, newspaper report or anything of Maglie socializing with Sinatra, though he did go to what was that club? The Copacabana?
Yes.
All of the big shots went to. Yeah, Maglie used to go there. And so, he probably met some of these people when he did that. And
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
For sure, loved athletes. And so he might have introduced them, but I never came.
Sinatra, big baseball fan. And he was a Dodger fan too, actually.
I don't know if any of you know, when I spoke to Judith on the phone, a lot of this book would be something that, this book would be something a lot of us would like to purchase, but she says there's a big issue. And one of those is on Amazon, where it's dated that it was written in the 1860s, and it's like $900. And Jeff,
$900 really got me.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't understand how you got the book.
I got it.
My books from places.
No, Jeff just got the book.
Oh,
I just bought it. I went on Amazon and it was there, and it was a hardcover, and it was new, and it wasn't overly expensive, and I bought it, and I got it like 3 days ago.
Well, maybe
Haven't started reading it yet, but I got it.
complained for weeks and weeks. I kept writing in complaints saying, what the heck is going on here? Change this. Maybe they finally did. I didn't actually look lately because I was getting so annoyed.
15, 16?
Yeah, I think that sometimes the sucker is born every minute. I tried to look at a Lefty Duel book that I have in my collection that I'm rereading. And I just looked at what it was costing out there. And it was the same kind of deal. It was like $900. I think there's people that think, gee, it's an old book, it's out of print, whatever. I'll pay anything to get it. And then, oh, well, there you go. They sold it for $900. There's suckers everywhere.
It's not out of print. It is.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
So there's no reason at all for it to. There's some data corruption, as one of my computer friends said. The data is corrupted.
Yeah.
But you can get bookstores to order it. Will order it for you too. And so it's not $900.
Jeff, you better check your credit card receipt, okay, my man? Patrick, you're up.
He said what it was when it came.
Patrick, go ahead.
Judith, your remark about saying that when Maglie became a Dodger in 1956, he really became a Dodger. What was his record against the Giants that year? And did he shave any of his former teammates?
I'm very bad at remembering statistics, but I think he did pretty well against the Giants. And I don't think he went after them specifically, trying to really instill terror into them. He was a professional. I don't think he took it out on his former teammates, in revenge for getting rid of him or anything. He knows that's a front office thing. It's not the team. It's not his teammates that sold him. It was the upper management. So, he just didn't engage in stuff like that. He got it, I mean, you all heard about his conflicts with Jackie Robinson, but they never degenerated, and he never, used any kind of ethnic profanity against Maglie, although or against Robinson, although Robinson would call him every name an Italian slur in the book, prefaced by fucking, you fucking dago, you fucking guinea, you fucking wop. He said he just used to rain ethnic slurs on him, but he never responded with, calling him a nigger or anything like that. He never used racial profanity. Everybody, I checked that with a lot of people, and they said he never did that. He could swear like mad, but he never used racial slurs.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I just went on Amazon. You're right. It's $955.
Oh,
But I saw, I mean, this is not going to help Judith any, but I see it's on eBay for like $23.85. I didn't look at Barnes and Noble. There's got to be a place you can get it.
Listen, I don't live on my book royalties. I'd be living under a bridge covered with old newspapers.
Okay, then everybody go on eBay. You can get it there for $23.85.
Or you can buy it at it was published by the Northern Illinois University Press, but they were bought by the Cornell University Press, so it's still available from them for the ordinary price, $900.
Again, Jeff, you better check your credit card. Steve.
Oh, yeah, like $27 or $28.
Perry Barber, I'm sure you got a question. Go ahead, Per.
Actually, I don't, but hi, Judith. Always happy to see another woman here at these meetings.
That's why I called on you, Perry.
And I particularly enjoy it that you are teaching us about somebody who bears my name as his nickname. I've always sort of gotten a kick out of that I'm Perry Barber and he's Sal the Barber Maglie. And there's something about him that's just always sort of, I don't know, gotten to me.
See,
you know what I mean?
Always thought Sal was
Perry, Perry, you came in a little late. Judith pledged her love for Sal Maglie with his unshaven
Okay, well,
look.
we'll have to talk. Definitely. So thank you very much for letting me speak. Hi, everybody. Always good to see you.
Let's go to Renee and then Patrick again. Oh, not Patrick, just Renee.
Before he played for any of the New York teams, did he? Was there any? Do you have any stories about him trying to get his pitching together, or who helped him become who he is today, or what he was? What he was.
Who helped him become what he is, or who he is, who he was?
Yeah, what he was playing for the Giants, Yankees, and Dodgers.
Well, the real mentor that he had, I think I talked about this when we were talking about the Mexican League, was Dolph Luque, the Cuban, who is also a notorious headhunter and a very temperamental, scary guy who used to pull a gun on his players. I mean, I read that repeatedly. I don't think that was a rumor, but he really taught Maglie how to pitch. Maglie had a very undistinguished minor league career, and if it weren't for the war, he probably never would have even made it to the majors. He had something wrong with him. I don't know, a sinus condition, something. He was 4F. They didn't want to draft him. So, he was one of those wartime players that got up through the ranks because there wasn't much competition. But if it hadn't been for Luque, he probably never would have learned to pitch the way he did. So I'd say that was probably the one figure who was really essential in his career.
Did he have a problem with Leo?
Well, yes and no. He would never publicly say anything against DeRocher because DeRocher gave him his chance to pitch with the Giants. But DeRocher didn't treat him very well. But again, it may have been just a tactic that DeRocher claimed, Maglie don't pitch good unless I whip him up into a rage, and then he goes out and he gets to fucking hitters. And sorry about all the bad language, but that's how they talk. So I was adapting it. And DeRocher was, of course, famous for his profanity. And he would, call Maglie all sorts of horrible names and ethnic slurs and so on. And Maglie would just kind of snarl at him, but never, get into a fight with him or anything. And DeRocher claimed that helped make him, get out on the mound ready to kill the opposing batters. So they had a kind of a complicated relationship, but Maglie would never badmouth DeRocher.
Harvey, you're up, then Mars.
Judith, I just want to say that profanity is my second language.
It's my third language after English and baseball.
Where was Sal when Bobby Thompson hit the home run?
He was stark naked in the clubhouse, smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer and thinking, oh shit, I just lost this game for my team. And Horace Stoneham walked in on him and he's in there with no clothes on. There's Stoneham in his suit, and telling him that the Giants won the game.
Wow. Thank you.
Well, he left the game. He was losing 4-1. And
Yeah.
he thought, shit, I just blew the game. I blew the whole pennant from my team. And he just sitting in the clubhouse. He didn't even feel like taking a shower. He just had a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other. And then he found out that, in fact, they had won.
Wow.
And then they said he had to rush and put on some trousers.
What a
The
surprise.
cameras came in and there he was, naked as a jaybird. So he pulled on his old dirty uniform trousers so he'd be wearing something when the cameras came in. Changing hats, huh?
You good, Harvey?
That's
Yeah,
good.
Mars, you're up, Mars.
Well, Judith, you talked about Maglie's reception and what Carl Furillo said. When Leo DeRocher went from the Dodgers to the Giants, that's about the same reaction in the clubhouse that the Giants players and fans had. Are you kidding me? That fucking lip going there.
Yeah,
And, so, right now I'm reading The Echoing Green, and it's talking a lot about Leo DeRocher in the first few chapters. So, Maglie going to the Dodgers, DeRocher going to the Giants, it had a lot of similarities as far as upending the clubhouses.
And people had to make big adjustments quickly.
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else with any more questions for Judith? Judith, can you show us the book one more time so we could know how to spend our $900?
There it is.
If I find it anywhere online, I will forward the link out to you guys. But Judith, we can't thank you enough for spending this 45 minutes with us. Did a fabulous job. Very funny, and you certainly know everything. So please
I'm
come
a
back.
idiot savant. I only know about Sal Maglie. Don't ask me about anything else.
And none of us were offended by the language. I'm telling you right now.
You're not. I'm sure you weren't.
Please feel free to come back and join us and sit in on a Zoom of your choice that you might find interesting.
And I
Okay.
just checked all my Amazon charges. None of them are $900.
Good.
This poor guy's going to stay up for
But I
looking
did
at
look
his
online
account.
also, and it is 900 something on Amazon. I did see
Yep.
it. 5 minutes.
I don't know if anybody's dumb enough to spend that much. That's crazy.
No,
Why don't we all give it up for Judith?
Okay, thank you all.
Judith,
am
thank
going
you
to-
so much. You're a pro at this, and now you know how to Zoom. This is great.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thanks
All right.
to you all. This
Have
was
a
a lot
great
of
night.
fun.
I will stay in here a while I close the door. Anybody who wants to hang out?
There was some discussion about Jim Bouton, recently connected with a law professor from Villanova. His name is Mitch Nathanson. He seems to be an authority on Jim Bouton, and I'm going to have him for my group out here in Arizona, going to do a Zoom in July. I can send Gary the link at some point before the session if any of you are interested in hearing his story about Jim Bouton. But
Bouton
whatever,
just
just
died a
because the
couple
name
years
came up.
ago, didn't he? Didn't Bouton just die?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Too bad.
Yep.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Night, Judith.
Good night, Judith.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judith. I just saw
Yeah.
Mitchell on a Zoom where he showed part